Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @symbol CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of July, from the sports section, Graham McGarry. Celtic must offer pathway after Kelly becomes latest concern. Report by senior sports writer Graham McGarry. When Celtic released news recently to revamp of their academy coaching setup, it rather brought to mind the old metaphor about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. No matter the configuration, the outcome has long seemed preordained. The issues with youth development in Scotland are widespread and cannot be laid at the door of any one club, even the biggest of them. And I am aware that there has been a similar dearth of talent filtering through at Rangers, lest I be accused of ignoring similar issues at Auckland Howie. But given that reshuffle behind the scenes at Lennoxtown and the ongoing contract dispute between the young prospect Daniel Kelly and the club, at this moment in time, it seems an opportune moment to examine just what it is that the Celtic Academy is looking to achieve. Is it to produce players for the Celtic first team? Because if that is the ultimate goal, then there is no escaping the fact that it has long failed to do so. Captain Callum McGregor and James Forrest came through the ranks to be mainstays of the side, of course, but they are now both the wrong side of 30. Kieran Tierney made the club a bucket load of cash after some hugely successful seasons in the team, but he left 5 years ago next month. After that, well, Mickey Johnson has floated around the periphery for an eternity. He is now 25 and comes back to the club this summer after a successful loan spell at West Brom. If he was ever going to be a Celtic regular, surely it would have happened by now. A fresh start would be best for all parties. Stephen Welsh. The defender is now 24 and has made just 66 appearances for Celtic in his entire career. Anthony Ralston is a dependable, if unspectacular deputy at right back. It's not a great return, no matter how you slice it. Is it the coaching? Chris McCart, long-term head of the academy, is a respected operator within the game. Beneath him, former Celtic players are everywhere you look. Johnny Hayes is the latest to join up as B-team coach, under B-team manager Stephen McManus. Darren O'Dea is now the club's professional pathways manager. This is not to necessarily say that these men aren't the right ones for these jobs, but there is no escaping the whiff of jobs for the boys around such appointments, as accomplished as these coaches may be. If you keep doing the same things and all that. Celtic are, of course, stuck between something of a rock and a hard place these days. Since Brexit, especially, English Premier League clubs who were once able to hoover up the best of the young talent across the continent are now paying much closer attention to prospects within the British Isles. They obviously have much deeper pockets than even the old firm, and, as soon as a truly outstanding prospect emerges, they are invariably lured down south. It happened with Billy Gilmore at Rangers before it happened with Ben Doak at Celtic, and the elite young players will continue to be picked off. That leaves Celtic with the rest. Players who may well be of a decent level, but are they really of the standard to make a difference for the Celtic first team? Time will tell in the case of the likes of Rocco Vata, who swapped Glasgow for Watford this summer in frustration at a lack of first team opportunities. Kelly looks to be going the same way. The question is, as much as these youngsters have to earn an opportunity, is it onus on Brendan Rodgers, or whatever Celtic manager is in situ, to trust them a little more? It is far too simplistic an argument to say that the likes of Lamine Yamal, tearing it up for Barcelona in Spain, having just turned 17 the day before he picked up a winner's medal at the Euros, would not get a sniff in Scotland, as I've heard many a time over the past 2 weeks. Nonsense. If there was a player of that level in any academy in this country, the only way he wouldn't be playing here is because he would already have been snaffled up by one of the super clubs. But there is certainly a case to say that many of Celtic's youngsters, who often find themselves logjammed behind some pretty mediocre imports that clog up the Celtic squad, don't reach their full potential because they aren't being given enough opportunities at first team level at an early stage of their careers. And no, turning out for the B team in the Lowland League is not the same thing. With the greatest of respect, would it have been too much of a risk to throw Kelly ahead of, say, Tomoki Iwata against Livingston, Ross County or St Johnstone? Would Vata have managed to match the creative output of, say, Nicholas Kuhn, who got 3 goals and 3 assists across 14 league appearances since arriving for £3 million in January? We will never know. In fairness to Rodgers, he sees these players every day in training, and he's correct to say that piling on a Celtic jersey is a privilege to be earned, rather than the right of any player who has come through the academy setup. But surely there has to be an established pathway for young players to follow. The deeper they get into their careers, and as they even age towards retirement, it is getting harder and harder to hold up McGregor or Forrest as the poster boys for what a young player at Celtic can achieve. Beyond the elite facilities you would have access to, why would any promising young player out there join the club? It's getting harder to argue it is, with a view to actually playing for Celtic. And it must be getting harder for the club to sell that dream. And that article was written by Graham McGarry. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of July, from the sports section, Mackay explains how Hibs plan to utilise partnership with Bournemouth. Article by Robbie Hanratty. Hibernian Sporting Director Malcolm Mackay has laid out his vision for the club's partnership with Bournemouth, which is led by billionaire owner Bill Foley. Mackay is seeking quality over quantity in his summer recruitment as he looks to help David Gray strengthen the squad and improve on Hibernian's disappointing performance in the previous Scottish Premiership season. The tie-up with Bournemouth, which was formalised last season through the Black Knight FC stake, allows Mackay to work closely with Cherry's chief Simon Francis. Mackay sees this relationship as an important part of his plans for Hibernian's future. However, the former Ross County boss acknowledges that before bringing in new players, Hibernian must first offload any underperforming members of the squad. Then, focus will be on adding only those individuals who can make an immediate impact on the first team, rather than bringing several players in through the Bournemouth link without a real purpose. Asked how he plans to work alongside the English Premier League side, Mackay said, "We're certainly going to try, put it that way. Myself and Simon Francis is the communication angle. He's new in his job but has been at the club. He's now the sporting director now that Richard Hughes has gone. He's going to have his own mindset on their needs in a new role. But we will have an ability to have conversations. I'm certainly going to go down, spend a bit of time down there. There are a lot of facets of sports science, the academy, best practices we can share. Obviously recruitment is the one that everyone wants to focus on, but that's got to be based on a player, a very specific player who's going to come and make a difference to our team. Mazia Malida proved a positive loan addition in January, displaying that he could instantly integrate into Scottish football, as did Emiliano Marcondes, who arrived in a temporary deal from Bournemouth. But there has also been instances of new recruits failing to hit the ground running and proving a waste of budget, which is something Mackay is desperate to avoid. Speaking to Edinburgh Evening News, Mackay continued, "So, as we saw last year, it's got to be on an individual basis. We can't just go for 4 players a year. There's no point if there's only one player who can hit the ground running in the Scottish Premiership. There's no point in the other 3, or if there are none able to do that. But certainly we hope to be able to lean on each other in recruitment if that's down to analysis, or finding out about a player. That's certainly how I see it working, communicating regularly, honestly and openly with a partner." And that report was by Robbie Hanratty.
This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 18th of July from the news section. Estate near Cairngorms hit with restrictions over crimes against birds. This article is written by Mark McDougall. Scotland's Nature Agency has restricted the use of general licences on an estate on the edge of the Cairngorms National Park for 3 years. The decision affecting Lochindorb Estate near Granton-on-Spey was taken by Nature Scot based on evidence provided by Police Scotland of wildlife crime against birds of prey protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. The evidence included a red kite found poisoned with an insecticide in 2021 near to a lapwing bait on land managed by the estate, and another being shot on the estate last year. A spokesman for the estate said it is considering appealing against the decision and emphatically denies involvement in any way or would condone the killing of protected bird species. General licences allow landowners to carry out control of common species of wild birds, such as crows and magpies, to protect crops or livestock without the need to apply for an individual licence. Donald Fraser, Nature Scot's head of wildlife management, said, "We have decided, in discussion with Police Scotland, to suspend the use of general licences on this property for 3 years until March 2027, given the persecution of red kites which has taken place on Lochindorb Estate and on neighbouring land managed by them at the time of the incident. Nature Scot is committed to using all the tools we have available to tackle wildlife crime. This measure will help to protect wild birds in the area while still allowing necessary land management activities to take place. We believe this is a proportionate response to protect wild birds in the area and prevent further wildlife crime. We will continue to work closely with Police Scotland and consider information they provide on cases which may warrant restricting general licences. The estate may still apply for individual licences. However, these will be subject to enhanced record-keeping and reporting requirements and will be closely monitored to ensure adherence with licence conditions. A spokesman for Lochindorb Estate said they are considering an appeal against the decision. He said, "We are extremely disappointed by the decision to restrict the use of general licences as part of our land management operations. The estate emphatically denies involvement in any way with or would condone the killing of protected bird species." Nature Scot itself makes clear that restriction of general licences does not imply responsibility for the commission of crimes on individuals, and we are actively considering an appeal against the decision. The decision revolves around 2 incidents, one 4 years ago and one more than a year ago, and investigations were carried out by the police and the estate at the time. Nature Scot has acknowledged that the estate has systems, protocols and training in place for estate gamekeepers in respect to wildlife management and the law. The estate is home to a large array of wildlife. There are significant wild bird numbers on and around the estate, including ground-nesting birds, and also a very large number of raptor species, including red kites, harriers, buzzards, ospreys and kestrels. Birdwatching is a popular and frequent activity on the estate. General licence restriction does not preclude the estate from applying for individual licences to enable the conservation of breeding wild birds on the estate. A spokesman for the Scottish Gamekeepers Association, SGA, which represents wildlife managers, said, "We cannot comment on individual instances because we don't know the circumstances of the case. We have not been involved in discussions at any stage. What we can say is that the SGA has a no-tolerance policy of wildlife crime and, as an organisation, acts accordingly. We have removed 11 members in the last decade where there have been wildlife crime-related convictions involving members. That policy will continue. That article was written by Mark McDougall. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 18th of July, from the news section. Royal Mail trial drones to deliver to remote Scottish Isles. This article is written by Josh Carmichael. Royal Mail has announced it will begin trialling a delivery method with drones to serve remote islands in Scotland. Drones will be used to deliver mail between two remote Scottish islands in collaboration with Skyports and Argyll and Bute Council. The drone flights will run between the Isles of Islay and Jura in the Inner Hebrides until Friday the 26th of July, with postal workers loading and unloading mail on both sides for the first time. Chris Paxton, Royal Mail's head of drones, said, "This drone trial is the latest step in our innovative collaboration with Skyports. Trialling drones allows us to test out new ways of working to support our posters in delivering to the most remote areas of the UK. As parcel volumes increase, we are continually looking for new ways to provide a reliable, fast and lower emissions service to all our customers, no matter where they live. The drones can carry weights of up to 6 kilograms and have been used in Royal Mail's previous trial in Orkney. They will deliver mail that is usually taken to the Isles via ferry in a Royal Mail van, with bosses at Royal Mail highlighting the poor weather and geography, causing disruption to ferry services and, in consequence, delays in mail and packages. This is the 6th time that Royal Mail has trialled drones, and the second using Extended Visual Line of Sight (EVLOS) flying, which allows drones to travel further than the standard visual line of sight by making use of trained observers along its route. The observers keep the pilot, who is flying the drone remotely, updated on critical information to ensure the drone maintains a safe distance from other air users, structures and any hazards. Royal Mail also claims the use of electric drones for inter-island delivery brings significant safety improvements, ensuring postal workers can deliver between ports and marinas without risk, as well as emission savings. The 6th trial, in collaboration with Argyll and Bute Council, is funded from a £250,000 grant that was given to the local authority by the UK Government in November 2022. The trials will serve as a building block to showcase the use of drones and their ability to enhance vital public services. Councillor Jim Lynch, leader of Argyll and Bute Council, said, "We are working hard to make good things happen in Argyll and Bute, and these innovative trials could transform the way vital services are delivered to people in our most remote communities. Not just council services either, but other local authorities, businesses, organisations and emergency services throughout the UK. There is huge value in partnership working to help bring benefits to the people of Argyll and Bute. In addition, by creating a permanent UAV hub at Oban Airport, we will be investing in future industries. We will be delivering new, greener jobs and boosting the local economy while continuing to drive down carbon emissions both now and in the future to create a climate-friendly Argyll and Bute. This is a very exciting time for everyone involved." In 2020, Royal Mail became the first UK parcel carrier to use a drone to deliver a parcel. The company worked with a consortium of drone companies, including Skyports, to deliver to a remote lighthouse on the Isle of Mull using a drone. Royal Mail and its partners achieved 2 further firsts in 2021, becoming the first UK parcel carrier to deliver mail to a UK island via an out-of-sight autonomous drone flight, and trialling the first inter-island drone flights in the UK with a smaller vertical takeoff and landing drone. Alex Brown, Director of Skyport's Drone Services, added, Argyll and Bute has been an important region for our UK flight trial and demonstration work over the years. With its coastal and island geography, drone services can significantly improve connectivity and bring substantial time savings for essential services such as medical logistics. We're pleased to conduct more flights in the region with the Royal Mail and Argyll and Bute Council, thanks to the regulator's Pioneer Fund. That article was written by Josh Carmichael. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 18th of July, from the news section. RSV vaccine appointments offered for over 75s in Scotland. This article is written by Helen McArdle. Appointment letters are being sent out to over 75s as a new vaccination programme against the respiratory virus RSV gets underway. Older adults are being encouraged to look out for the appointment letters arriving in post over the coming weeks. There were more than 1,000 cases of respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, confirmed among adults over 75 in Scotland last year, with more than 535 spending time in hospital as a result of the infection. However, the actual number of infections will be much higher as most adults would never become sick enough to be tested for the virus. RSV is also the leading cause of emergency respiratory admissions to hospital in Scotland in infants, with 1,516 children aged under 1 hospitalised with the virus last year. RSV is a common and highly infectious respiratory virus that affects the breathing system. It generally causes mild illness with cold-like symptoms, such as a runny nose, cough, fever, or decrease in appetite. Most people recover naturally after 2 to 3 weeks, but RSV can affect the lower airways in some people and cause severe illnesses such as pneumonia and bronchiolitis, leading to complications and hospitalisation. In 2023, the UK's Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, JCVI, advised that the RSV vaccine should be made available on the NHS initially to adults over 75 and to pregnant women to protect newborns. Public Health Scotland has been working with the Scottish Government and NHS boards to develop plans for the rollout of Scotland's RSV vaccination programme to protect newborns, infants and older adults. Appointments will start during August 2024. Those turning 75 years old on and between 1st of August 2024 and the 31st of July 2025 will be the first to receive invitations. The vaccine will also be offered to anyone who is aged 75 to 79 years old on the 1st of August 2024 as part of a catch-up programme, as the RSV vaccine is new to Scotland and this group could not be given the vaccine before now. Also starting from August, pregnant women will be offered the vaccine during discussions with their midwife from 28 weeks into their pregnancy. The timing of the vaccine offer will help protect their newborn babies from serious illness caused by an RSV infection. Dr. Nicholas Finn, Director of Public Health Science at PHS, said, "Vaccinations have played a major role in protecting the health of people across the globe over the last 50 years. The launch of Scotland's new RSV vaccination programme marks another significant step forward to protect the health of the population. RSV can be very serious for those who are more vulnerable, such as older people. In recent years, we've seen an increase in those aged 75 years and over being hospitalised for RSV, which is a concern. That's why we're asking all those who are eligible for the RSV vaccine to look out for their letter and take up the offer to protect themselves against the more serious complications of an RSV infection." Justine Craig, Chief Midwifery Officer of Scotland, said, "I encourage pregnant women to take up appointments for RSV vaccination and discuss with their midwife to protect their babies from the virus during the first weeks and months of life." RSV is one of the leading causes of hospitalisation in a baby's first year of life, and this vaccine could save lives. Vaccination could avoid thousands of GP, A&E visits and hospital admissions. Vaccinations will be in place from early next month to maximise the benefit to pregnant women and their babies ahead of winter. Dr. Mike Coates, a GP in Lanarkshire, said, "I'm delighted that there is now going to be a vaccination programme in Scotland to help some of those who are most at risk from getting an RSV infection. RSV is a common respiratory virus, like the cold or flu, that can lead to very serious infections in some people, such as pneumonia and bronchiolitis, which is an infection of the small airways of the lung. If you are eligible, getting vaccinated is the best and simplest thing you can do to protect yourself or your newborn baby from RSV and any potentially serious illness it can bring. For older adults who will receive a letter in the post, I would strongly encourage you to read the information and attend the appointment to get your RSV vaccine." That article was written by Helen McArdle. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 18th of July, from the news section. Student jailed over cyber attacks on government and company websites. This article is written by Mark McDougall. A 21-year-old university student has been jailed for 21 months for constructing and selling a cyber attack program capable of causing chaos on company and government websites. Amar Tagore from Alexandria, Dumbartonshire, earned tens of thousands of pounds from offering buyers a malicious software that could disrupt state-run as well as corporate websites. The software was bought by hundreds of people online and allowed them to carry out distributed denial of services (DDoS) attacks on systems and forced users to take their websites offline. Tagore also offered technical support to people who bought the software, and he was sentenced at Dumbarton Sheriff Court after pleading guilty to charges of computer misuse and a breach of proceeds of crime legislation. Sineadine Corrins, Deputy Procurator Fiscal for Specialist Casework at the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, COPFS, said, "Amar Tagore's criminal conduct had the potential to cause serious disruption to government-affiliated and commercial websites all over the world. He made tens of thousands of pounds through the sale of his malicious software and technical expertise. But now he is paying the price for his criminal conduct, and we are already taking steps to recover his criminal benefit under proceeds of crime legislation. This investigation involved domestic and international partners and reflects the worldwide nature of cybercrime investigations, which does not stop at traditional borders. COPFS is committed to fighting cybercrime at all levels and to protecting our communities and businesses from the effects of such criminality." Police were alerted to the third-year cybersecurity students' actions after the Department of Work and Pensions, DWP, suffered regular attacks at their job centre site in Braintree, Essex, over a period from May to August 2022. Police identified a suspect and discovered a mobile phone running a program called Myra, which was running attack commands towards the DWP computer system. Further investigations then traced the Myra homepage and its IP address to Tagore, with the website offering different packages which could be purchased. The normal package was for beginners, while a VIP package would give users a larger network increase and complex vector structures, and the VIP Plus package stated that it had access to all add-on packages for full accessibility to the network, specialised with your attack suite to meet any desires. The court was then told how officers carried out a search of the house Tagore shared with his parents in November 2022 and found him logged into a Myra 6 terminal window through 2 large monitors and using commands which allowed another user to use 2 separate attack methods. Further analysis of his laptop later revealed 73,347 search references that included the word Myra, with another 1,131 being found on his mobile phone. Tagore earned £44,433 from the sales of his malicious software and is now subject to confiscation action under the Proceeds of Crime legislation. That article was written by Mark McDougall.
The Herald on the 19th of July and the Voices section. Keir Starmer and Labour victory lacks great hope of 1997 by Ian McConnell. The 2 weeks since Labour won power have confirmed one thing. This victory is nothing like the one in 1997, which ushered in sweeping changes that were highly positive for the economy and society. This is no surprise. No one who had followed the new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer's ultra-cautious general election campaign could surely have expected the sort of transformation that was delivered by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown from 1997 after 18 long years of Tory rule. The last few years of that reign by the Conservatives were arguably not quite as bad as what went before under Margaret Thatcher, but Messrs Blair and Brown were nevertheless able to deliver radical change that put the UK on a good path. It was a period of robust and steady growth. The pair had a bit of a tailwind as they embarked on their plans, with the economy doing okay. Sir Keir has a more difficult economic backdrop with which to contend, and while he might get a bit of an early boost when the forecast fall in interest rates eventually starts, and with pressure on real wages easing, any such tailwind will be weak. The announcer Tony Blair ensured a huge majority in 1997, with many famous Tory names losing their seats, in no so small part by delivering a message which did not scare Middle England. He and his government pursued a fairly centrist economic policy. And seemingly in no small part because of the deep thinking of Mr Brown, the rewards of the UK's economic success were distributed far more fairly, without any undue burden on better off sections of the electorate. Tax credits went a very long way indeed to ensuring people in work had enough to get by. And then there was adequate welfare provision, something that is surely a prerequisite for any civilised society. Sadly since then, we have had the savage cuts to welfare implemented by the Conservatives from 2010 onwards. These cuts are now embedded, sadly. We should not underestimate the lasting impact of the UK's particularly severe inflation crisis on millions of households. And in-work poverty is a major problem. This is obviously an absolutely grim situation from the perspective of society. It is also, of course, bad for employers and bad for the economy. We hear a lot of talk about productivity, and yes, of course, productivity is related to investment in technological advances. However, it all depends on the mood of workers, even and perhaps especially so those in more autocratic corporations, which seem far more prevalent these days than in the past. People with major money worries will, for all their efforts and with the best will in the world, not be the most productive. Of course, Labour's fine showing in the economy from 1997 came unstuck amid the global financial crisis, which got underway in earnest in the autumn of 2008, but was in the post for at least a year before that. Interestingly, Labour was unable to find its voice to assert correctly that this crisis was a global phenomenon rather than something of its making. The clue was, of course, in the word global. Now, nevertheless, the Tories appeared to make the accusations they threw at Labour on this front stick, even though no one would surely imagine the Conservatives would have regulated the financial sector to a greater extent than Labour. Any notion that they would have done is absolutely laughable. We should also remember the great job in 2008 by Mr. Brown, by then Prime Minister, and his Chancellor Alistair Darling in swiftly putting in place arrangements that warded off a complete collapse of the UK financial system. By doing so, they mitigated greatly the damage to the country from the global financial crisis. Returning to the Labour Party under Sir Keir, one striking feature is that a lack of excitement around it. That is not to say that excitement is always good. However, in this case, a bit of energy and excitement would be most welcome, even if it was just a significant fraction of that in 1997. Households and businesses in the UK have been suffering a protracted economic malaise. The cost of the Tory hard Brexit had been very great indeed, and there is more damage to come on this front, sadly, with Sir Keir and his cabinet having ruled out rejoining the European Union, the single market, or even the customs union. Labour has thus shunned the potential big win, if it could be agreed with the EU, single market re-entry and the return of free movement of people between the UK and the European Economic Area, and restoration of frictionless trade with our biggest trading partner would be a very big deal indeed. Sir Keir and his government have also decided to undertake what looks like a similar exercise to that required of three-legged race contestants at the starting line. They have restricted themselves greatly by deciding to adopt the Tory fiscal framework, even though the Conservatives' economic performance was absolutely dismal, and even though Labour has a huge majority and always looked likely throughout the campaign to win a resounding victory, given the dismal state of the Tories. So there seems to be little prospect of big, exciting investment programmes which might boost growth and generate tax revenues and actually bolster the public finances. That is not to say that Labour has done nothing, even in the relatively few days since it came to power. Sir Keir declared the Conservatives' Rwanda deportation scheme for some asylum seekers entering the UK was dead and buried shortly after becoming Prime Minister. This is a very welcome move from a societal perspective and in terms of the UK's international reputation, which has been so badly damaged in recent years in so many ways under the Tories. Labour's employment law reforms are also most welcome. The erosion of workers' rights under the Conservatives has been nothing short of alarming. However, it is astoundingly difficult to see the big distinctions between Labour and the Conservatives when it comes to the economy in Europe. There should be a big opportunity here on both of these fronts, especially given just how badly the Conservatives have performed and the damage they have caused. For now, though, at least it seems Sir Keir and his cabinet do not want to grasp it. It is a far cry indeed from those heady days of 1997, and that was by Ian McConnell.
From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 20th of July, from the news section, exclusive. Fall in remote small town young Scots entering higher education. This article is by James McInerney. Pupils from remote small towns are less likely to go to higher education than ever before, official statistics show. Just under 25% of school leavers from such areas went on to higher education in 2022-23, while just over a third did so in 2009-10, which is when the current data published by the Scottish Government begins. Leavers from remote small towns are now by far the least likely of all young people to enter higher education. The Scottish Government's follow-up Leaver Destinations publication, released last month, provides data on the activity of school leavers in the year 2022-23. Those involved in education, training, employment and voluntary work are classed as securing a positive destination. Nationally, the positive destinations figure has remained above 90% since 2012-13, while the gap between the richest and poorest students has narrowed from 13.3 to 7.5 percentage points across the same period. However, the data shows that the school leavers' chances of achieving positive destinations are also affected by their geographical location. The Scottish Government uses an urban-rural classification system which divides the country into 6 categories depending upon their size, location and connectivity. Large urban, other urban, accessible small town, remote small town, accessible rural and remote rural. Remote small towns are settlements of 3,000 to 9,999 people, and with a drive time of over 30 minutes to a settlement of 10,000 or more. The council areas with the largest population percentages living in these locations are Orkney, 33.5%, Argyll and Bute, 30.4%, Shetland, 29.6%, and Nahale and Sia, 27.5%, excuse my Gaelic. Urban-rural classification. Large urban areas are settlements of 125,000 or more people. Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh, Greater Glasgow, Motherwell and Wishaw. Other urban areas have a population between 10,000 and 124,999, including Ayr, Dunfermline, Inverness, St Andrews, Stirling and Troon. Accessible small towns have a population between 3,000 and 9,999 and are within a 30-minute drive of an urban area, including Auchinleck, Dunblane, Gretna, North Berwick, Shotts and Straven. Remote small towns have the same population level as accessible small towns, but a more than 30-minute drive to the nearest urban area, including Campbelltown, Girvan, Kirkcudbright, Lerwick, Newton Stewart, Oban, Thurso and Wick. Accessible rural areas have a population below 3,000 and a 30-minute drive to an urban area, including Beauly, Dalmellington, Lochwinnoch, North Queensferry, Portpatrick and Torrance. Remote rural areas have a population below 3,000 and a more than 30-minute drive time to the nearest urban area, including Aberfoyle, Gairloch, Kinlochleven, Newtonmore, Pitlochry and Ullapool. According to the most recent official data, just 24.2% of school leavers from remote small towns went on to higher education. This compares with a figure of 41.1% for those in large urban areas and 33.3% for young people from remote rural areas. This does not necessarily mean that all went on to university, because a significant proportion of Scottish higher education is in fact delivered by colleges. Although all areas have seen a decline in leavers going to higher education since 2019-20, the drop for remote small towns is especially steep. A closer analysis of the school leavers from remote small towns moving on to education or employment shows the percentage entering college, further education, is also lower than historic levels, although it has increased since the clear dip in 2020-21. Between 2009-10 and 2019-20, between 23 and 24% of school leavers from remote small towns went into further education, but this figure then fell to just 16.1% in 2020-21. Although this figure has since risen slightly, it still has not returned to previous levels. In contrast, the numbers entering employment after school have risen from a pre-pandemic high of 33.9% to the most recent figure of 45.5%. However, the Scottish Government has long been criticised for including forms of employment such as 0 hours contracts in the positive destination statistics, and no breakdowns are available to show the type of employment that has driven the increased levels in remote small towns. Educational disadvantages for those from remote small towns are also observable in other data sources. In December 2023, the Herald reported that students living in these areas have recorded lower attainment levels in literacy and numeracy since current data collection methods began in 2016-17. Just 65% of primary school pupils from remote small towns met the expected levels in literacy, and 73% did so for numeracy. In both cases, this is around 10 percentage points lower than pupils from accessible rural areas, who are the top performers. Although the gaps are narrower for S3 literacy and numeracy, pupils from remote small towns are still the least likely to achieve the expected levels at this stage. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "Widening access to higher education is a priority for the Scottish Government, including for those who live in rural areas. As part of this commitment, we are considering possible measures to ensure those in rural communities have equal access to universities." Ministers will continue to engage with COSLA on these statistics and any variation across the country, recognising their responsibilities for the statutory delivery of education locally and with our colleagues and wider partners. The dataset used to compile the destination statistics does not include the contractual status of employed young people. While responsibility for employment law lies with the UK Government, the Scottish Government is firmly opposed to the inappropriate use of 0 hours contracts and other non-standard types of employment that offer workers minimal job or financial security. We therefore look forward to hearing more from the UK Government on their proposed legislation in the King's Speech to ban exploitative practices and update employment rights. And the article was an exclusive by James McInerney. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 20th of July, from the Politics section. SNP call for Four Nations Summit to address child poverty. Report by Gabriel Mackay. The SNP have called for a Four Nations Summit on child poverty as Sir Keir Starmer continues to face pressure over the 2-child benefit cap. The party's Westminster leader has written to the new Prime Minister requesting a meeting with the devolved administrations with an estimated 4.3 million children, 30% of the country, living in relative low-income households. Mr Starmer is likely to face a rebellion next week over the abolition of the 2-child benefit cap, with 4 amendments to the King's Speech tabled. The cap was introduced by George Osborne on April 5, 2017, and prevents parents from claiming child tax credit or universal credit for a third child and any subsequent if they were born after that date. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, it currently affects 2 million children and will encompass close to 700,000 more by the end of the current Parliament, with campaigners saying its removal could lift 300,000 out of poverty. Of the 4 amendments tabled, 1 has been put forward by the SNP, another 6 by Labour MPs, a third by the party's former leader Jeremy Corbyn, now an independent MP, and the Greens, and a 4th by 4 independent MPs. It is up to the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, to select which amendment, if any, is put to a vote, and while any amendment would be defeated, it would put Mr Starmer in a difficult position. The Liberal Democrats, the SNP, the Green Party and Reform UK all oppose the cap, and a number of Labour MPs would rebel to vote against it. The new government has stated it cannot commit to removing the cap due to the state of public finances, with Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones saying Labour do not have a spare £3 billion a year to abolish it. The SNP's Westminster leader has written to Mr Starmer to reiterate the party's opposition to the cap and to call for a summit among all 4 nations to tackle the issue. Stephen Flynn wrote, "While abolishing the 2-child cap is essential, it is also clear that it is only a baby step forward in the substantial action required to eliminate child poverty. There is no question that significant investment and a holistic approach is required to achieve this goal. I know you are keen to work with the Scottish Government, devolved nations and across parties in this important issue. In Scotland, the SNP Government has taken bold action by introducing the Scottish Child Payment, Best Start Grant and Baby Box, among other game-changing progressive policies to tackle child poverty. These measures have lifted thousands of Scottish children out of poverty, but for every step Scotland has taken forward, Westminster cuts like the 2-child cap have dragged us back. It is important for the governments across the Isles to work together in this issue, to move quickly and to learn from best practice. I am therefore calling for a 4 Nations Summit on eradicating child poverty this summer." Mr Flynn also called on the UK Government to abolish the 2-child cap, introduce a child payment UK-wide, introduce a child poverty cap, and expand the provision of free childcare, as well as following Scotland's Baby Box and Best Start Grant schemes. Labour announced this week that the Work and Pensions Secretary and Education Secretary will lead a wider review of the issue, while a new child poverty unit will be launched inside the Cabinet Office. Mr Starmer said, "For too long children have been left behind and no decisive action has been taken to address the root causes of poverty. This is completely unacceptable. No child should be left hungry, cold, or have their future held back. That's why we're prioritising work on an ambitious child poverty strategy, and my ministers will leave no stone unturned to give every child the best start at life. Alison Garnham, Chief Executive of Child Poverty Action Group, said, "A UK-wide focus on child poverty is long overdue, and the UK Government's announcement this week of a child poverty task force is a welcome first step. The two-child limit is a cruel policy. Scrapping it must feature in the next UK budget, and families in Scotland also need the Scottish Child Payment to increase. Kids in poverty can't keep waiting for change, and we will look for action, not words, from all our politicians." And that report was written by Gabrielle Mackay and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 21st of July, from the politics section. Former Chancellor apologises for UK COVID pandemic failures. Report by political correspondent Kathleen Nutt. Jeremy Hunt has apologised for failures in the UK's pandemic preparations, highlighted by the COVID inquiry. Asked by the BBC's Laura Kunsberg whether he would like to apologise for what went wrong, the former Health Secretary said, "Absolutely. I was one of many ministers, many officials, many scientists who were part of a groupthink where we over-prepared for pandemic flu. We didn't think about other types of pandemic, and we should have challenged that groupthink. I apologise unreservedly to the families. That was the most terrible tragedy of what happened to this country during COVID. And I think, by the way, the report has some very sensible recommendations, including simplifying the structures of preparing for these kinds of emergencies, and I very much hope the government adopts them." Last week, the UK-wide public inquiry found that both the Scottish and UK governments failed their citizens by not adequately preparing for COVID-19. In its first report into preparedness for a pandemic, the UK COVID-19 inquiry said there was a damaging absence of focus on the measures and infrastructure that were needed to deal with fast-spreading disease, even though a coronavirus outbreak at pandemic scale was foreseeable. It also found Scottish ministers adopted flawed UK government resilience plans without adapting them for Scotland's needs. A major flaw, according to the inquiry, was the lack of a system that could be scaled up to test, trace and isolate people. The report added, despite reams of documentation, planning guidance was insufficiently robust and flexible, and policy documentation was outdated, unnecessarily bureaucratic and infected by jargon. The inquiry said that there was no hesitation in concluding that the processes, planning and policy of the civil contingency structures within the UK government and devolved administrations and civil services failed their citizens. The COVID inquiry, which has been chaired by Baroness Heather Hallett, published its 217-page report last Thursday. She said lessons must be learned because, unless we are better prepared, the next pandemic will bring with it immense suffering and huge financial cost, and the most vulnerable in society will suffer the most. She added that the belief that the UK was one of the best prepared countries in the world to respond to a pandemic was dangerously mistaken, and, in reality, the UK was ill prepared. She added, there were serious errors on the part of the state and serious flaws in our civil emergency systems. This cannot be allowed to happen again. The report's findings included: the UK prepared for the wrong pandemic, namely a flu pandemic. Furthermore, this flu plan was inadequate for a global pandemic of the kind that struck. In the years leading up to the pandemic, there was a lack of adequate leadership, coordination and oversight. Ministers failed to challenge sufficiently the advice they did receive from officials and advisors. There was groupthink, and they did not receive a broad enough range of scientific opinion and policy options. Scientific communities advising ministers may have been affected by groupthink. There was too little challenge to what was said. Experts were limited in what they could advise, and expert advice on pandemic preparedness was overly weighed in favour of biomedical science. The institutions and structures responsible for emergency planning throughout the government were labyrinthine in how complex they were. Following the report's publication, First Minister John Swinney said, "The Scottish Government will carefully consider the recommendations made by Baroness Hallett in the UK COVID-19 inquiry report and provide detailed responses to the recommendations within the timescales that have been set out." Families across the country lost loved ones to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we offer our deepest sympathies to all those who have experienced pain and grief as a result. It is with their loss in mind that we continue our efforts to make effective, practical and measurable improvements in pandemic planning and preparedness. The implementation of recommendations will require collaborative action with our counterparts across all 4 nations, and the Scottish Government is committed to working together at all levels in a way which allows us to best prevent, prepare for and respond to future civil emergencies. Responding to the report, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said ministers will be carefully consider Lady Hallett's recommendations, adding it is a top priority for his government. He said, "The government's first responsibility is to keep the public safe, and as Prime Minister, I am personally committed to each and every family that lost loved ones and whose lives were changed forever, that this government will learn the lessons from the inquiry." There were more than 235,000 deaths involving COVID-19 in the UK up to the end of 2023, including more than 17,000 in Scotland. Last week, the failings were branded as corporate homicide by Amir Anwar, who is the lead solicitor for Scottish COVID bereaved. And that report was by Kathleen Nutt. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 21st of July, from the politics section, Marie Black, "Kate Forbes' views are quite extreme," by political correspondent Kathleen Nutt. The SNP must avoid a lurch to the right under the extreme views of Kate Forbes, the party's former deputy Westminster leader has warned. Marie Black, who stepped down as an MP at the general election, called on the SNP to get its own house in order after her party's devastating defeat on July 4th. She will lift the lid on life at Westminster as part of an hour-long debut comedy show at the Fringe in August, including drunkenness in the voting lobbies and archaic traditions. Ms Forbes, who is a member of the Free Church of Scotland, provoked anger in the SNP in last year's leadership election when she said she would have voted against gay marriage in Holyrood and having children outside marriage was wrong. However, she later softened her stance to say she would not change the law on gay marriage if she became First Minister. She lost out to Humza Yousaf in the 2023 leadership contest to succeed Nicola Sturgeon. Mr Yousaf was forced to stand down as SNP leader and First Minister in April and was succeeded by John Swinney in May, who made Ms Forbes Deputy First Minister in an effort to unite the party and put more of a focus on economic issues. Ms Forbes had been considering entering the 2024 leadership race, but opted not to do so, saying the approach Mr Swinney had set out in his pitch for the top job aligned with her own. However, Ms Forbes' return to cabinet has not been universally welcomed by those in the socially progressive wing of the SNP, such as Ms Black. Interviewed by the Sunday Post, Ms Black said, "We all remember Kate Forbes' interview where she said she wouldn't have supported gay marriage and doesn't think people should have kids out of wedlock. Basically really archaic and, in my opinion, quite extreme views. That is out of step with what the SNP has stood for. Where the SNP has attracted so much support is because it has been this progressive force. It has been wanting to take Scotland into the 21st century and wanting to be inclusive. If you then start endorsing the sort of views Kate Forbes was saying voluntarily, on camera, then that's a massive red flag to so many people, particularly young people. The truth is, independence won't happen without young people, and certainly support for the SNP and success for the SNP won't happen without young people on board." Asked what advice she would have for the new First Minister, Ms Black said he must get real and brutal about what he needs to change in the SNP. She said, "I think of a lot of the SNP's woes in the past few years have been internal rather than external things happening to them. Basically, the party needs to get its house in order, and that's not going to happen unless there is real commitment to it, and the leader is making it happen." She said not enough was done to improve the structures of the party to make them fit for purpose under the increased membership, with bosses instead brushing problems under the carpet. Anything that's uncomfortable, let's not talk about it, Ms. Black said. All that breeds is resentment, disappointment and disillusion. I think that is the basis for a lot of the difficulties that the party has had. In March last year, during the leadership contest, Ms. Black said Ms. Ford becoming the next First Minister could risk splitting the SNP. Speaking on the Bunker podcast, she insisted that Ms. Ford's views on social issues had been damaging for the party. Asked if Ms. Ford's becoming SNP leader would split the party, she said, "Honestly, I don't know, to tell you the truth. It's very much a wait and see what happens. I wouldn't even want to risk that, that's why I'm backing Humza. I think he's the best person to be able to band folk together again." Ms. Forbes has repeatedly come under pressure over her personal moral and religious views, which are seen as out of step with her party's stance on some social issues. However, when she was appointed Deputy First Minister in May, she insisted she would accept collective cabinet responsibility, meaning she would vote in favour of party policy. Last month, she voted in favour of the final state of legislation to create buffer zones outside abortion clinics in Scotland. The bill put forward by the Scottish Greens MSP Gillian Mackay will not allow anti-abortion protesters to demonstrate within 200 metres outside healthcare services. The move is designed to stop patients and staff from being intimidated. Commenting on Ms. Black's remarks, an SNP spokeswoman said, "The SNP has consistently been a moderate left-of-centre political party that is resolutely focused on delivering for the people of Scotland. Whether it's free prescriptions, free tuition, or the game-changing Scottish Child Payment, we are determined to build a better Scotland and work towards Scottish independence. Our key priorities of eradicating child poverty, promoting economic growth, ensuring our public services are sustainable, and tackling climate change are also those of people across Scotland, and we are committed to delivering on these priorities." The SNP suffered a humiliating defeat at the general election, winning 9 seats, down from 48 in 2019. The result has led to calls within the party for change. Earlier this month, former Health Secretary Alex Neil said Mr Swinley should stand down as leader in favour of Ms Forbes and Westminster SNP leader Stephen Flynn, as the party prepares for the Holyrood election in 2026. Both Ms Forbes and Mr Flynn have backed Mr Swinley remaining as party leader and First Minister. And that report was by Kathleen Nutt, and it was read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 22nd of July, from the Arts and Entertainment section, man behind Banksy's Glasgow exhibition announces retirement plans. Report by Mark McDougall. The man behind Banksy's surprise Glasgow show is to retire as head of Glasgow Life Museums and Collections after almost a decade in the role. Duncan Dornan has been with Glasgow Life for more than 10 years, after initially joining as Senior Museums Manager, before then moving on to his current role in 2015, but will leave the company on Friday, August 23rd. He was responsible for Banksy's exhibition in Glasgow's Gallery of Modern Art in 2023. That show attracted 180,000 visitors across its 10-week run from June to August 2023 and brought £13.5 million into the city's economy. Cut and Run showed off 25 years of Banksy work at the Gallery of Modern Art and included many of the world-famous graffiti artists' most iconic work. It ran for 3 months from June to September 2023 and included authentic artefacts, ephemera, and the artist's actual toilet. During his time with Glasgow Life, Mr Dorner has also played key roles in a number of other projects that have been huge in the city. That includes the £68.25 million refurbishment of the Borough Collection and, in 2023, that was named as the recipient of the world's most prestigious museum's prize, the Art Fund Museum of the Year. Since it reopened in March 2022, it has attracted 1.3 million visitors, while he also, behind the ongoing work done at the People's Palace in Winter Gardens, which will cost £35.9 million in total, and was initiated through a successful funding application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. The refurbishment of Providence Lordship, Glasgow's oldest building, was also done in his watch, which was repaired at a cost of £1.6 million and reopened in March 2024. During his tenure, Glasgow Life Museums have also become the first in the UK to repatriate objects to India, while there are ongoing negotiations about the return of other city-held museum objects to their rightful owners. He also created a dedicated curator role to explore legacies of slavery and empire in Glasgow's collections, in a bid to provide a better understanding of the city's role in transatlantic slavery and colonialism. He said, "The people of Glasgow have a real sense of pride in their ownership of the city's museums. It has been an enormous privilege to lead Glasgow Life Museums, and I would like to thank my incredible team, whose passion and care for the city's collections has driven record numbers of local and international visitors. 1 in every 3 visits to a local authority museum in Scotland today is to a museum in Glasgow. Glasgow Life Museums bring audiences to Scotland because of their exceptional quality, breadth and diversity. Our offer is both unique and world-leading, and our role as an innovator in museums practice is recognised globally, which is something I am very proud of." During his time in the job, Glasgow Life Museums recorded almost 4 million visits between 2023 and 2024. More than half of those visits came from people outside the UK, and 85% of those said it was a reason to come to Scotland. Glasgow Life Museums also managed to diversify its local audience, with 50% of visitors living in parts of the city that experience some of the highest levels of deprivation in Scotland. Bailey Annette Christie, Chair of Glasgow Life, paid tribute to Mr Dornan and believes his work will be remembered and cherished for a long time to come and will leave people grateful. She said, "Glasgow's museums have always belonged to the people of Glasgow. They are cherished by local people because they show who we were, who we are and who we want to be. Anyone who has ever visited one of Glasgow's great museums has reason to be grateful for Duncan's exceptional contributions. Duncan has taken Glasgow Life Museums to even greater heights, and this is reflected in the awards and interest we receive from around the world. On behalf of everyone at Glasgow Life, I wish him the very best for the future and a long and fulfilling retirement." The search for his replacement has now started, with Glasgow Life partnering with Saxton and Bampfield to recruit the new head of museums and collections. And that report was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 22nd of July, from the business section. Scotland to be hit by bin strikes as unions reject offer. Article by Josh Carmichael. Scotland's waste workers, street cleaners and recycling operators could all go on strike next month after another pay offer by COSLA was rejected today. Following a meeting in Glasgow with COSLA on Monday morning, Unite the Union and GMB have turned down the latest offer of 3.2%. Unite has said that mountains of rubbish will pile the streets, as they branded it as a grossly undervalued pay offer for council workers, but COSLA said it was a credible offer that can barely be afforded at a time of serious financial strain for Scottish councils. Unite said no extra cash had been added to the new pay offer by COSLA, which comes 2 months on from its previous offer and amounts to a 3.2% increase for a 1-year period between the 1st of April 2024 and the 31st of March 2025. The union has said the new offer grossly undervalues Scottish council workers, in contrast with the offer made to UK counterparts, where a 5.2% increase was tabled. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham said, "COSLA has taken months to put a new offer to our local government membership, and it's one that does absolutely nothing to address more than a decade of deep cuts to the pay and services. Unless COSLA and the Scottish Government move quickly to make an acceptable offer, then mountains of rubbish will pile up across the nation's streets. The politicians have a choice, and one more chance, to resolve this pay dispute before strike action. The 3.2% offer equates to £800 extra per annum, or a 41p per hour increase. whereas the offer made to England and Wales and Northern Ireland by the National Joint Council, NGC, equates to a rise of 5.2% for a council worker earning around £25,000 based on a 37-hour week. Unite says the difference means that Scottish council workers will need to earn more than £40,000 to match the offer being made to the council workers across the rest of the UK. The union says it means that the lowest paid workers have been disproportionately hit by COSLA's offer. The industrial action could come as early as August, with GMB already having the backing from workers in nearly half of the 32 local authorities across Scotland. Speaking after the meeting, GMB Scotland's Keir Greenaway also echoed his concerns for the disparity between offers in Scotland and the rest of the UK. Mr Greenaway, who is Senior Organiser in Public Services for GMB, said, "For COSLA to suggest this is a revised and improved offer only insults the intelligence of our members. It is merely a repackaging of the previous offer already rejected as too low and too late. It begs the question why more weeks have been squandered on this when time is running out to halt imminent industrial action. We continue to believe a joint approach seeking more funding from the Scottish Government remains the most likely route to a resolution. Council leaders must meet as a matter of urgency and agree to approach ministers. So far, unfortunately, it seems some leaders have preferred to protect relations with their party colleagues at Holyrood instead of urgently seeking a resolution to this dispute. Our members deserve better, and Scots relying on the frontline services they deliver, and that is every one of us, deserve better too." Unite also has strike action mandates involving thousands of its members across 16 councils, and it is in the process of reballoting workers in 5 other councils in Aberdeenshire, Argyll and Bute, Falkirk, Scottish Borders, South Lanarkshire. Graham McNabb, Unite Industrial Officer, added, "COSLA's latest pay offer doesn't add any extra cash. It continues to grossly undervalue Scotland's council workers compared to the offer made to their counterparts across the UK. A stinking Scottish summer looms unless COSLA and the Scottish Government quickly sort this out by injecting more cash into a new offer. Any offer will need to value the lowest paid council workers, at least, on similar terms as the offer made to other UK council workers. The Scottish Government can no longer sit idly by. We are on the brink of a nationwide strike action which could last for months." COSLA Resources spokesperson, Councillor Katie Hagman, said, "We are extremely disappointed to hear that all unions have rejected the revised offer. I'll reiterate that the revised offer we put forward last week was a strong, fair and credible pay offer, higher than the rate of inflation and worth more than the first year of the Scottish Government's public sector pay policy. We have been very clear in all discussions with trade unions that the offer is also at the very limit of affordability for councils given the challenging financial situation we are facing. While we are disappointed with this outcome, we remain committed to continuing to engage as positively as we can with our trade unions. Our strike action is in nobody's interests." And that report was written by George Carmichael and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 22nd of July, from the business section. SSE reveals plans to progress Great Glen pumped hydro scheme. Report by Deputy Business Editor Scott Wright. Energy giant SSE is to progress plans for a new pumped storage hydropower scheme at Loch Fearna in Scotland's Great Glen. The proposed project, which SSE is pursuing in a 50-50 joint venture with a consortium led by Gilks Energy, is located at the western end of Glengarry, around 25 kilometres west of Invergarry, adjoining SSE Renewables' existing Loch Keogh reservoir in the Great Glen hydro scheme. It envisages the development of tunnels and a new power station connecting the reservoir at Loch Keogh with an upper reserve reservoir at Loch Fearna. The proposed scheme would have a generating capacity of up to 1.8 gigawatts and be capable of producing around 37 gigawatt hours of stored energy capacity. The project has already secured a grid connection offer totaling 1,795 megawatts. SSE Renewables said it already operates the largest fleet of hydroelectric power and pumped storage hydro assets in Scotland. It is now progressing development plans for a new pumped storage hydropower projects in the Highlands to complement its existing fleet and deliver the large-scale, long-duration energy storage (LDES) needed as part of Britain's future energy mix. Ross Turbot, Head of Investment Management for Hydro, SSE Renewables, said, "As the UK transitions to net zero, the development of additional pumped storage hydro projects will be crucial for energy security and for balancing an increasingly renewables-led energy system during periods when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine." The proposed Fearna project is a welcome addition to our development of pipeline of pumped storage hydro projects, which also includes a proposal to develop what could be one of Britain's biggest pumped storage schemes in 40 years at Core Glass, and our intention to convert our existing Slough power station into a pumped storage facility. Our vision for the delivery of pumped energy storage solutions for a net zero Britain demonstrates SSE Renewables' ongoing commitment to optimising the value of our existing hydro assets while investing in new hydro projects as part of our wider renewable portfolio. SSE noted that a request for scoping opinion for the project is currently before Scottish Government ministers, adding that consultation had already begun with local communities and organisations. If consented for development, the project could begin commercial operations in the mid-2030s, subject to reaching a final investment decision. Fearna could be one of the largest pumped storage hydro projects in the UK. Carol Crompton, Managing Director of Gilks Energy, said, "We were delighted to launch, in partnership with SSE Renewables, the Fearna pumped storage project. Energy storage allows energy produced during times of excess generation, mainly wind, to be stored and released later when there is a deficit of renewable energy. Pumped storage hydro projects are in effect very large water batteries, and the technology behind these projects is very mature and robust. PSH projects can easily last for 100 plus years with no degradation in performance. The recent publication of the government consultation on long duration electricity storage (LDES) support, likely to be a cap and floor mechanism, is also a significant step forward. This consultation recognised both the value of pumped storage hydro, but also the challenge of financing such capital intensive and long lead time projects. The proposed cap and floor mechanism has been used successfully to bring multiple interconnector projects to fruition, and we hope a similar mechanism will unlock the financing of a number of PSH projects. We look forward to bringing this pioneering project to fruition. Pumped storage hydro works by using two reservoirs of water at different elevations over a short distance. This generates power as water moves down from one reservoir to the other, passing through turbines. Water is pumped back into the upper reservoir at times of excess renewable energy generation, allowing excess renewable power to be captured and stored like a giant natural battery. And that report was by Scott Wright.
The Herald on the 23rd of July and the news section. 18-storey Glasgow student block approved despite local uproar by Esther Tarnay. A student apart hotel labelled by locals as a disaster has been approved in Glasgow city centre. As reported by our sister title, the Glasgow Times, in April last year, plans were submitted for the demolition of the building at the corner of Cambridge Street and Renfrew Street. It was proposed that the site would be replaced with an 18-storey structure containing around 160 student apartments. In response, over 40 objections were logged by the community, who said they opposed the scale of the development. One local, Ian Wright, described it as a disaster. The 78-year-old said the average height in the conservation area is 4 storeys high, because the majority of them are tenements, and this building is going to be well above the normal skyline for Garnet Hill. It is only approximately 175 metres to the east of the art school, so it's really going to end up towering over it. And as you know, that school's world famous, and we don't really want to have anything that's going to affect the look of it because lots of tourists come here. And there's also the Glasgow Film Theatre. is going to completely overlook that. And again, it's an icon and a lot of people come and photograph that as well. Despite the backlash, Glasgow City Council's planning officials granted permission for the project, the Glasgow Times reports. The development will replace an unlisted 3-storey building, which has been unoccupied for many years. Papers state the proposed redevelopment presents the opportunity to redefine a key site to the northwest of the city centre and a 1-minute walk from Glasgow's Sauchiehall Street. And that was by Esther Tarney. The Herald on the 23rd of July and the news section. Edinburgh facing tram strikes as drivers balloted by union, by Gabriel Mackay. Strikes could hit Edinburgh's tram network and workers are balloted over action due to issues with the route to Edinburgh Airport. Drivers, ticket service assistants, controllers and vehicle maintenance workers who are members of the Unite Union will vote on whether to walk out in a ballot that runs from July 29 to August 12. In a consultative ballot previously conducted by the union, over 160 tram workers indicated by 99% that they are prepared to take industrial action on an 84% turnout. The issue stems from what the union said were late running times to Edinburgh Airport, which are preventing its members from taking breaks. Unite claims there is a shortfall of between 5 to 6 minutes in the running time from Edinburgh Airport to Newhaven, with each round trip taking around 2 hours. The maximum driving time before a scheduled break is 5 hours. Many tram workers go this length of time without hydration or toilet breaks, the union said. This is due to running late and having to make up time, which is said to have contributed to health issues developing amongst workers, including stress and infections. The union further said a new tram timetable has added 4 minutes to each run, and delays to a new signalling system have contributed to increased delays. It alleged that some trams regularly run up to 30 minutes late, with control having to turn trams around mid-route, meaning the tram workers have no time to go to the toilet. Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham said Unite's Edinburgh's tram workers are facing an unacceptable health and safety situation due to the pressures of having to get the travelling public to Edinburgh Airport. We will back our tram membership all the way in the fight for better jobs, pay and conditions. Lynn Turner, Unite Industrial Officer, said Edinburgh's tram workers are emphatically saying give us our breaks. The sustained pressure being put on our members to complete the airport to Newhaven round trip is resulting in an alarming rise in incidents at work, including stress and infections. The situation has arisen due to delays in the new signalling system and changes in the new timetable, which were not properly tested before going into passenger service. Action needs to happen quickly or strike action will be inevitable. Spokesperson for Edinburgh Trams said, we are surprised the union has taken this course of action as it has been closely involved in our talks with the Trams to Newhaven project team on the efficiency of traffic signals that sometimes cause delays. However, we remain committed to ongoing discussions between all parties with the aim of addressing their concerns while improving services for customers. And that was by Gabriel Mackay. The Herald on the 23rd of July and the news section. More than £40 million in funding announced for new electric buses by Mark McDougall. The Scottish Government will fund more than £40 million worth of electric buses and have promised to deliver on a new charging network for buses, coaches and HGVs. John Swinney said the vehicles would be used to serve 100 new inner-city bus routes throughout the country, while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions by more than 600,000 tonnes. Total grant funding is worth £41.7 million and will support 8 operators across Scotland, resulting in 232 new buses and coaches. These will be delivered by electric vehicle fleet specialist Zenobe, which will also work on a Scotland-wide charging network for use by all buses, coaches and HGVs. Premier Coaches, McGill's Buses, Stagecoach, Harry Haggis Tours, Mains Coaches and DNA Coaches are all involved in the project, along with the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. The government is providing funding as part of the second and final round of the Scottish Zero Emissions Bus Challenge Fund, Scott ZEB 2, but the money will also help bring in private investment, the First Minister said. Speaking during a visit to Stagecoach Depot in Dunfermline, Mr. Swinney said, supporting zero-carbon buses as a sustainable means of public transport across Scotland will connect communities and open up new economic and social opportunities. He added, this investment will deliver 100 new intercity bus routes and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than 600,000 tonnes over the lifetime of the fleet by encouraging more people to swap the car for efficient public transport, which is crucial to reaching net zero by 2045. Every pound from the Scottish Government will leverage £3.20 of private sector investment, demonstrating that our shared decarbonisation goals can be met by working together when it comes to removing carbon emissions from our bus and coach fleets. The First Minister continued, all bus and coach operators, including those operating in smaller towns and communities, will benefit from the novel approach to financing and the Scotland-wide charging network that will be delivered, helping other modes of transport make the switch to electric vehicles too. Stephen Mearsman, the co-founder and director of Zenob, said, we look forward to delivering an additional 252 vehicles and associated charging infrastructure with our consortium partners. This is on top of our existing 110 vehicles in Scotland and alongside over £750 million commitment to battery energy storage systems in the region. Chris Ashley, policy lead for the Road Haulage Association, said the plans for a charging network for buses, coaches and HGVs marks another significant step as the commercial vehicle sector seeks to reduce its carbon emissions. He added, moving away from fossil fuels requires a change of mindset on how everyone operates. The access to charging infrastructure via ScotZeb2 is a welcome initiative to help commercial vehicle operators plan the introduction of zero-emission vehicles to their fleets. And that was by Mark McDougall.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, Tune Review, and tell your friends about our service.